Have you ever stopped to consider that something as common as the salt found in our kitchens daily might carry a much deeper meaning? In the scriptures, salt transcends the simple act of adding flavor to food. It is portrayed as a powerful spiritual tool. Imagine someone entering their home and sprinkling a bit of salt at the entrance, not out of superstition, but out of genuine faith, believing that this act could protect their family. But where does this belief originate? What does salt truly symbolize in the pages of the Bible? Since the times of the scriptures, salt has been used in sacred ceremonies, important agreements, and even as a means to ward off evil forces. It is not merely a common seasoning, but a significant symbol of purity, covenant, and protection. When Jesus referred to his disciples as the salt of the earth, he was highlighting the unique role each of us is meant to play. But what does it really mean to be the salt of the earth? And how can we bring this concept into our daily lives? As we delve into the Bible, we find that salt plays a crucial role in various stories. It not only purifies but also preserves and protects. When we think of salt being used to seal eternal covenants between God and his people, we begin to understand that it is more than just a simple seasoning. It is a representation of something eternal and unbreakable. But how can we use salt in our own spiritual journey? In this video, we will explore the true power of salt in the Bible. We will see how it has been used to ensure protection, purification, and even to break curses. Get ready to discover a new meaning for something you use every day, but that could actually be the key to a deeper connection with your faith. Purification with salt is a practice that dates back to ancient times, present in various cultures and especially in the Bible. Salt is seen as an agent of purification, capable of removing not only physical impurities, but also spiritual ones. As stated in Leviticus, chapter 2, verse 13, the use of salt in offerings is a commandment, symbolizing the covenant with God and the purity required to be in his presence. Thus, the application of salt is a way of seeking sanctification. Covenants established with salt carry a unique significance in the scriptures. Salt was used as a symbol of a lasting and unbreakable commitment, as seen in Numbers chapter 18, verse 19, where God makes a salt covenant with Aaron and his descendants. This covenant represents something that cannot be undone, immutable, like the nature of salt, which preserves and maintains the integrity of what it touches. In this way, salt becomes a tangible representation of loyalty and constancy. Cursing with the use of salt might sound strange, but in the Bible, we see salt employed to demonstrate God's power in situations of judgment. In Judges chapter 9, verse 45, Abimelech sows salt over a destroyed city, symbolizing desolation and God's judgment on that place. This act was not just physical, but carried a profound spiritual significance, showing that salt could mark the end of something, rendering a place unproductive and symbolically dead. The connection between purification, covenants, and curses reveals just how multifaceted salt is in its biblical symbolism. It purifies, establishes covenants, and can be an agent of judgment. Interestingly, this seemingly common substance is imbued with spiritual power that transcends its simple everyday use. Understanding the biblical context, we realize that salt is more than just a seasoning. It is a symbol of profound and varied meanings. The practice of using salt in purification rituals is common in various traditions, but in the biblical context, it takes on the role of spiritual renewal. For instance, in 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 19 to 22, Elisha purifies a water source with salt, restoring it for the good of the people. This teaches us that salt, in addition to purifying, has the power to renew and restore what is broken or impure, serving as a vehicle for blessings and healing. Reflecting on the use of salt for cursing, we realize it carries enormous symbolic weight. It is not just a physical substance, but an act that can have significant spiritual repercussions. Just as salt can preserve and purify, it can also be used to separate and destroy when employed judiciously. This duality of salt in the Bible leads us to a deeper understanding of its role in spiritual practices. In creation, salt was already destined for a special purpose. It is not just an ordinary mineral, but an element created with intrinsic spiritual value. In Genesis, God creates all elements with a defined purpose, and salt stands out for its ability to conserve and purify. Its role in creation reveals a divine intention, to be a tool for the preservation and purification of what is sacred. The purpose of salt is manifested in various ways throughout the Scriptures. Beyond its practical use, salt has deep meaning in the relationships between God and His people. According to Matthew chapter 5 verse 13, Jesus states, "You are the salt of the earth." Here, He is not just referring to physical salt, but to the calling of Christians to be agents of preservation and spiritual influence in the world. Thus, salt becomes a symbol of the Christian mission. When we compare salt with other sacred elements like oil or incense, we see that each has a specific role. Oil, for example, is used for anointing, symbolizing the presence of the Holy Spirit. The incense represents prayers rising to God, as in Revelation chapter 8, verses 3 and 4. Salt, on the other hand, is distinguished by its power to purify and preserve, a unique role that places it in a special position within biblical rituals and symbolism. While oil is used for consecration and incense for intercession, salt is employed to seal and protect. Each element has its value and purpose, but salt, with its purifying capacity, is seen as a symbol of renewal and faithfulness. Comparing it to other sacred elements, we understand that salt is intrinsically linked to the idea of permanence and divine protection, something reflected in its numerous uses in biblical texts. Salt also serves as a constant reminder of God's covenant with His people. When we look at biblical covenants like the salt covenant mentioned earlier, we understand that it symbolizes something lasting and incorruptible. This durability contrasts with other elements that, although sacred, do not have the same physical and symbolic resilience that salt possesses. This makes salt a powerful symbol of commitment and eternal loyalty. Finally, the comparison of salt with other sacred elements leads us to reflect on the importance of each within the biblical tradition. While oil and incense are important in their respective contexts, salt emerges as a symbol of stability and preservation, standing out for its role in conserving what is sacred and protecting against spiritual corruption. It is this characteristic that makes salt a central element in biblical history and in the practice of the Christian faith. Purification rituals using salt are ancient practices deeply rooted in biblical tradition. Salt, with its purifying power, is used to cleanse both body and spirit, symbolizing the removal of impurities. In 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 19 to 22, we see the prophet Elisha purifying bitter waters with salt, making them drinkable and beneficial for the people. This act is not just physical but also spiritual, symbolizing restoration and divine blessing. Breaking curses with the use of salt is a practice that also carries significant spiritual weight. Salt, in its essence, is seen as an agent that can neutralize negative forces and dispel the influence of evil. In many traditions, salt is sprinkled around a house or sacred space to ward off evil influences and protect those who reside there. This use of salt is rooted in the belief that it can purify and transform the environment, driving away all that is impure or cursed. Spiritual protection with salt is a practice that transcends cultures and eras. In the Bible, salt is repeatedly mentioned as a symbol of protection, whether in covenants or rituals. According to Mark chapter 9, verse 49, Jesus says that everyone will be salted with fire, a symbolic reference to the process of purification and protection that salt represents. This demonstrates that, in addition to purifying, salt also has the power to protect against evil, maintaining the spiritual integrity of the faithful. These purification rituals, when performed with faith, have a profound impact on the spiritual lives of people. For example, when using salt to purify the entrance of one's home, a person is symbolically asking for divine protection over that dwelling, an act of faith that can bring peace and security. It is important to remember that although salt is a physical element, its use in spiritual rituals is an expression of trust in God's power to purify and protect. In addition to its ability to purify and protect, salt is also used in rituals to break curses that may be affecting a person or place. The simple act of salting a place in the name of God can be seen as a silent prayer, asking for the breaking of curses and the restoration of peace. This use of salt as a spiritual weapon demonstrates faith in God's power to transform adverse situations into blessings. The spiritual protection provided by salt is not only symbolic, but also practical, reminding us that our faith can manifest in concrete actions. By using salt in purification or protection rituals, we are reaffirming our belief in God's power to guard us from all evil. This deep understanding of salt as an agent of spiritual protection leads us to reflect on the importance of living according to the faith we profess, always trusting in divine providence. Throughout history, salt has been a powerful symbol laden with meaning in various cultures and religions. In the Bible, salt is more than just a seasoning. It represents purity, durability, and incorruptibility. When Jesus declares in Matthew chapter 5 in verse 13, "You are the salt of the earth," he uses salt as a metaphor for the role of Christians in the world, to preserve faith, bring flavor to life, and prevent moral decay. Therefore, salt becomes a symbol of continuous commitment and positive influence. In addition to being a symbol, salt also had economic value, being used as currency in various ancient civilizations. Its value lay in its ability to preserve food and its importance in religious rituals. In biblical times, salt was so valuable that it was traded as if it were gold, which is where the word salary originates. This use of salt as currency reflects not only its material value, but also its symbolic value as something that preserves and sustains life. Salt is also intrinsically linked to eternal covenants in the Bible. And as mentioned earlier, in Numbers chapter 18, verse 19, God makes a salt covenant with Aaron and his descendants, symbolizing an eternal commitment. This salt covenant is a guarantee that God's promises are enduring and unchanging, just as salt preserves and maintains. Thus, salt serves as a constant reminder of God's faithfulness and his commitment to his people. However, the Bible also contains warnings about the misuse of salt. Just as it can purify and preserve, salt can also lose its flavor, becoming useless. In Luke chapter 14, verses 34 and 35, Jesus warns, "If salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned?" This passage cautions us about the responsibility we have to keep our faith alive and effective, without allowing it to become sterile or purposeless. Salt should be used meaningfully and respectfully, honoring its spiritual value and purpose. The warnings against the misuse of salt teach us about the importance of intention behind our spiritual actions. When used correctly, salt can bring great blessings and protection. But if used without discernment, it can lose its meaning and effectiveness. This leads us to reflect on how we should live our faith authentically, always mindful of the true purpose of salt in the Scriptures, to preserve what is sacred and protect against spiritual corruption. In summary, salt is more than a physical element. It is a symbol rich in spiritual, economic, and moral significance. It reminds us of the importance of keeping our faith active and of using our spiritual resources wisely. The biblical warnings about salt call us to deep reflection on how we are living our faith and invite us to renew our commitment to God. Just as salt preserves, sustains, and symbolizes eternal covenants. Throughout this journey, we have seen how salt, an element so common in our daily lives, carries a rich and powerful symbolism within the Scriptures. From purification rituals to eternal covenants, salt has been revealed to us as more than just a seasoning, but as a true symbol of protection and covenant. Its presence in biblical stories shows us how important it is for keeping our faith alive and pure. The lessons we have learned here invite us to reflect on how we can apply this knowledge in our lives. Just as salt preserves and purifies, we are called to preserve our spiritual values and seek constant purification in our journey with God. Perhaps it is time to reconsider the role of salt in our lives, not just as an ingredient, but as a spiritual tool capable of connecting us more deeply with our faith. Now I invite you to apply these teachings. How about including a small purification ritual with salt in your routine? Asking God for protection for your home and your family. Try it and see how this simple act can bring peace and security to your home. Remember, the power of salt is real, and it can be a powerful spiritual weapon in your walk of faith. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share this knowledge with your friends and family. This way, more people can discover the hidden truth of salt in the Bible and how it can transform their lives. And don't miss the recommended video at the end, where we continue exploring fascinating topics like this one.